Support the motion.
Ms. Stefanik of New York moves to recommit H.R. 1585 to the Committee on the Judiciary with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendment. Page 1, strike line 4 and all that follows and insert the following. Section 2, stop grants. Section 1001A18 of the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1968.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading.
The House will be in order.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the House reading.
Is there any objection? Without objection, the reading is dispensed with. The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, in the United States, 1 in 3 women have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. 1 in 7 women have been injured by an intimate partner. 1 in 10 women have been raped by an intimate partner, and 1 in 7 women have been stalked. Let those numbers sink in for a moment. These are more than just numbers. These are our mothers, sisters, daughters, friends, and colleagues in this chamber. Today's motion to recommit would extend the Violence Against Women Act through 2020 in order to continue critical services that protect millions of women, girls, and children across our country. I have a proven track record of supporting VAWA, and today I am continuing the fight by standing up for the victims and survivors to make sure their voices are heard. Last year, I introduced legislation that would extend the Violence Against Women's Act. Last year, I introduced legislation that would extend the Violence Against Women Act. And then just last month, I introduced another bill that would reauthorize this program. We all know in this chamber that the bill Speaker Pelosi has put on the floor today will not pass the Senate and be signed into law. However, my bill, this motion to recommit, could pass the House, the Senate, and be signed into law this week. This extension gives Republicans and Democrats time to work together to pass a truly bipartisan, long-term reauthorization of VAWA, just as Congress has done many times before. Sadly, there has been very little effort from my Democratic colleagues to meaningfully engage in a process to reauthorize VAWA that could pass with broad bipartisan support. The Democratic bill, 1585, was referred to 7 House committees, but was only reported out of the Judiciary Committee on a party line vote. It politicizes VAWA and could put women, girls, and children at potential risk in the future. Ending violence against women and protecting women and children should not be a partisan issue. But unfortunately, Speaker Pelosi and House Democrats have made it a partisan issue. They have refused to work with Republicans in a meaningful way to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act every chance they got, including most recently in February during spending negotiations. House Democrats are the reason this law has lapsed, putting lives in jeopardy and leaving victims, survivors, and families at risk. Every single minute that this critical life-saving program goes unauthorized is another minute that women who need help can't get it. I ask my colleagues today, and the House is not in order.
The House will be in order.
I ask my colleagues today, can we stop playing political games at the expense of vulnerable women? We must. Voting yes on this motion to recommit is the only opportunity to extend current law. Voting no on this motion to recommit means that you are voting to end the Violence Against Women's Act and instead knowingly voting for a partisan bill that will never see the light of day in the Senate.
House will be in order.
Collect dust in the Senate. Once again, the Democratic bill on the floor today will collect dust in the Senate, scoring political points We should never prioritize that over the millions of women and children in this country. Let's pass this clean extension today to extend the Violence Against Women's Act, fight for millions of women in this country, fight for survivors, fight for victims. I'm asking you to vote yes on the motion to recommit, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
I rise in opposition to this motion to recommit.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have nothing but great respect for my colleague who offered this. And I do wish that we could do this together and not politicize it. But that's exactly what we're doing. And this motion to recommit would just totally undermine this bill because it is a short and incomplete reauthorization. It undermines the Violence Against Women Act, the Women's Act, and this important effort to reauthorize it. This bill takes out things that have become so basic, like the Rape Prevention Fund, testing of rape case kits, which is a horror across this country, and how many haven't been tested. It takes away child abuse training. None of that is in this motion to recommit. And what makes me really sad is that this bill is one of the most successful laws this House has passed. In the 25 years since it was enacted, violence against women by a spouse or an intimate partner has dropped by 65%. We need to build on that progress. Since then, victims, survivors, and the communities where we live have relied on the Congress to help provide resources needed to prevent and investigate these crimes and to assist survivors. I remember what it was like. I remember what it was like when you called the police and they didn't come because your father was an important man in town. I remember what it was like when someone on our college campus was raped and the police came to them and said, "It's your fault," and would do nothing. And I don't want anybody in this House to forget that Michigan State University, with hundreds of victims, was only brought to the forefront last year when hundreds of victims tried to tell people something was happening and nobody would listen. We cannot go back to those days. Since then, since the original passage of this bill, we learned from experience and from the unfortunate continued perpetration of these crimes. This House together, on a bipartisan basis, reauthorized VAWA in 2000, 2005, and 2013. This bill builds on our progress and success. We must not only reauthorize it, but make its programs even more effective and help survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, and other forms of harm with issues that they face. Women are staying in these situations because they need to go to the doctor and they can't afford health care, they can't find a place to live, they don't have economic security. These are among the issues that this bill is trying to address. This motion to recommit would kill the bill, and it leaves victims vulnerable. I do volunteer work at these at places where people go for domestic abuse. Have you talked to anybody there? Do you know how scared they are because funding's already being impacted? Stepping back means looking the other way when victimization is taking place and they're counting on us to do something. That's why we cannot undermine this important law. And I'm going to say one other thing. Do not let the NRA bully you. This is not a poison pill. The provision in this bill, don't forget who I was married to. John Dingell was on the NRA board. Hell, he helped start it. But all this does, we're not taking away due process. All it does is say that if someone has been convicted as an intimate partner, that they would not have access to a gun. And if someone has been convicted of stalking, you know what I'd say to all of you? All right.
Okay. The gentlewoman's time has expired. The House will be in order.
You know what? You need to not be
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
You need to not be
The gentlewoman's
I'm
time
gonna
has
keep
expired.
Talking. You know what? You can't shout
The
down
House
a
will be in
woman.
order. The members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The noes have it. The motion is not adopted. The gentlewoman from New York.
I request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the chair will reduce to